I'm Marcy McDonald with Pacific Northwest Suburban Homesteading, and this is my sister Jennifer, and
Hi.
she's showing how she home cans roasted turkey.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. This is fun.
Well, thank you for doing this. This is not something that I do, but I think this is a valuable thing that you do that you can add to the channel.
Absolutely. There's nothing I like more than to share something that brings such joy to me and is such a useful thing for every day. If you have small children, to just pull some turkey out of the pantry and make a turkey sandwich instead of a tuna sandwich, or take it to work, whatever. And then the thing that I like the most is being able to control my own ingredients. It's important to me, my family. We have hypertension and other medical issues that run in our family, and it's important for me to keep everybody healthy. I'd like to have them around for a long time.
All right, let's get started on canning my turkey. So I pre-roasted the turkey, I've deboned it, and I've chopped it, and I have that here in this pan.
Jenn deboned the turkey she made for us in preparation for canning off camera. To see where Jenn roasts the turkey, click the link in the description. She also added in leftover meat from the freezer.
I froze this ahead of time since I'm roasting a turkey. That way I can can it all together. So this is the turkey that I've cooked previous. I'm just prepping it to get it ready for canning.
Once cut, she warmed the frozen turkey up to temperature in hot broth.
I have in this pan, I have boiled chicken stock. So once I put the turkey in the jars, I'll top it off with the chicken stock. And then I'll put the lid on. You see, I have heated and soaked my lids in warm water. That isn't necessarily something that's recommended on the jar. They actually say, now you don't have to do that. I find that I'm way more successful in having less failed seals. If I do that, all it does is soften up the rubber. I don't think it's hurting anything. I haven't had any problems. I'd much rather preserve my food than have a bunch of hard work sitting on my counter that didn't seal. And now we either have to eat it right away or it goes bad. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna fill my jars with my shredded turkey. I'm gonna fill them to 1 inch from the top. 1 inch from the top is the bottom of the little rings that your lid screws onto. That's 1 inch. And I'm gonna pack it pretty firmly in there, taking out any skin or anything that's in there that's kind of the undesirables. And this is the part, it takes a little bit of time to do this just because it's, you know, you might find a big piece and it looks really good in there, but then it's just too much for the jar. So like we have some beautiful pieces in here. And I've got dark meat, I have the white meat. It's just all in here. Try to take out all the schmutz and any of the skin. That just tends to get really soft and the texture isn't pleasant. So you see I'm pushing it down and like I've created a little pocket there. So I want to fill that little pocket with some of the turkey. So we're nice and packed in there. So you're really kind of packing this like a can of tuna. And honestly, you can use this, and I mentioned before, you can use this just like tuna instead of. I'm not a fan of canned tuna. So this is a great way to kind of do the same things. You could make, you know, like the turkey salad sandwiches, or you could make casseroles. So pack it pretty loosely. You fill it to the top. You know, that's not much. It's only a handful of meat. That's not enough for a sandwich or anything. So we want to get enough that we can have a meal. Even if it's a meal for two, if you add some vegetables and rice, or make some pasta and throw this in with the pasta, all great ideas. And it makes a little bit of turkey like this go a long ways. and a quick, easy meal. One thing that you want to do before you start is you want to check your jars. You want to make sure that there's no chips or cracks in your jars. That, of course, not only will cause waste, but obviously then the canning process is compromised. So I might top off a couple of these because I don't have enough for a whole other jar. I know overfilling can cause issues with sealing, but I think I'm okay. I think I've been careful enough to make sure that these aren't overfilled. Okay, now I'm going to add a little bit of salt. It's not necessarily a preserving thing, but it helps with flavor. I have plenty of flavor though, even though I've got the broth and all of that, but it's just something that I do, I guess. Now it's canning salt. You can use kosher salt. There's a different ratio of kosher versus canning salt. You can use table salt, but the ratio is way different because of the size of the grains. So right here, I'm using canning salt that I've just put in my little canning jar here. So here we go. I'm just going to put a little bit of salt on these, not much. Enhances the flavor a little bit. Make sure that I get each of them. This is 1/8 of a teaspoon. I'm not even really filling it all the way. I'm not real fond of a lot of salt in my cooking. And you can't take salt out once you put it in. So if it needs a little bit more after I can it and when I go to use it, then great. That's when I'll add it. So that is the salt. Now I'm going to top these off with the broth. Again, you don't fill the jars all the way. Fill them to about 1/2 inch. You see how these are bubbling and going down. They're not boiling or anything. That bubbling is filling in the air bubbles. There's another step to this process that you do to remove the air bubbles to make sure that you have enough liquid in your jars for the proper canning, so you're processing them appropriately and safely for your family. And then when I'm all done, my last load, however much broth I have left, I'll just throw that in a jar and I'll can it with the next load, making sure that I can it for the appropriate canning time. So what I have this nifty little doohickey. What's cool about this is on one side, it gives you your measurements. All tested, true, and safe recipes will tell you how much headspace you use between your product and your lid, and you can use that on the side of the jar to make sure that you've got enough space. This side, however, is to debubble, which is really important, like I was saying, about making sure that you have enough product or the proper amount of product when you can. So if you add liquid to something and it's got bubbles in it, that liquid layer is going to go down. This one I might pour off some of the liquid and I'll re-push the meat and mixture down. So you just go around all of them. Make sure that we don't have air bubbles. Like this one, the liquid's gone considerably down in it. There was air pockets in there that were filled. Okay, so I'm going to take my fingers, I'm going to push these back down. I don't know if that's the scientific method. That's the Jenn method. This is how I do it. It's for my family. They can deal with my fingers. This one here seems a little bit full. So I think I'm just going to pour off some of the liquid off of that one. But just a scotch more of these. Just a few of them. You know, some people would rather measure all of this. I've done this a lot. Like pretty decent at eyeballing. I think I'm good there. So, and now goes
the wiping the lids. Actually, I almost missed a step there, as you saw. Just want to wipe the lids of any residue, make sure that there isn't any chunks of turkey or maybe some oil like grease or whatever from the stock, because that will, like, I don't know if you can see that on there. We might get a close-up. That can cause your jar not to seal, because the little rubber part on the canning lid, which I'll show you, may not be able to sit flat on the rim of your jar. And if that's the case, then it's not going to be able to seal properly. The little rubber seal here is what I was talking about. It needs to sit flat on the top of the jar here, so you get a good seal, and then your product is safe. So after you can, they make this cool little pop sound. At least this type of lid does. There's other types of lids which I've used. They're called Tatler lids, or there's some other kinds that don't make that pop noise. These do, because they're aluminum, or they're steel. That's right. Aluminum is non-magnetic. I should know that in the line of work that I do, being an auto body. Now, when you put the rings on, you don't take it and just rank it on there as tight as you can, because you need, as the product heats up, it will like siphon out, I guess is what you can say. So you want it to be able to, as it boils, if anything needs to siphon out, if they're too full or what have you. But if what'll happen is this will boil in there, and then it'll buckle your lid outwards. So you just don't want it to be really tight. I do a finger tight. I either do it with my left hand, which is my non-dominant hand. That's usually what I handle, or I'll just do it with a couple of fingers on my right hand. You put it on there and a little turn. Little turn like that. It doesn't take much. Sometimes when you take these out of the canner, you'll have some of them that are loose, but that doesn't matter, because that isn't what preserves it. That's just what keeps the flat piece from flying off in the canner. That's really the only purpose of this. If they're too loose, then they can't come unscrewed, and then they do come open. And that's not something that you want, because again, it's just a waste of your time, a waste of your product. I hate those when they get bent. Sometimes they don't want to go on. There we go. When I do this, I kind of push down on the rings a little bit. Otherwise, it'll just spin. I'm trying to get that last little bit. It's just little tips, little things that I've run across through the years. I used to be really afraid to pressure can. I remember as a little girl, my mom used to pressure can, and there was steam going everywhere and things jingling and hot, and it was just scary. I thought it was like a bomb was going to go off. Now that I'm a grown up, I realize that there's lots of safety measures that the manufacturers of the canners go through, so your canner doesn't become a bomb. And then as long as you're doing things correctly, you shouldn't have that problem. All right, so I've got one layer down with 8 jars, these half pint jars. This canner fits 2 layers of half pints, or 1 pint layer, or 1 quart layer. Now, in order to stack jars, you can't stack the jars right on top of each other like this. You can't stack them where you have one in between 2 jars like that. You have to have some sort of a rack in there that's designed for keeping the layers apart from one another. So now I have another 5 jars to put on top. So I'm going to put them in here kind of at an even distance. Now you don't have to fill in a pressure canner. You don't necessarily have to fill the spaces with empty jars.
I do if it's maybe a pint or a quart and they might fall over in my canner. But with these, there's no way this can fall over because it's wider on the bottom than it is the side. So I'm just going to put those in my canner just like that. So now I've got the lid to my canner. It shows a little arrow on the lid, and you match that arrow up with the arrow on the canner. Sometimes it's on the side of the canner. Mine on this particular canner is right here on the handle. So in order to properly seat your canning lid, you match up the arrow with the arrow, and then you turn your canner all the way until it stops. So at this point, over high to medium high heat, you heat up your canner until steam vents out of this little port right here. You let it steam for 10 minutes, and then you put the weight on it right here. You add it out. You put the weight on it. This is a 10-pound weight. I also have a 5-pound weight, 15, 20, depends upon your elevation, depends upon what you're canning, depends upon your recipe, how many pounds of pressure. This is a 10-pound pressure. So we will, once it vents, we will plop that right on top. And then we'll watch this gauge go up to, and this is actually, you wait until it goes to the 11 on there. And then I will cook this for 75 minutes, which is the pint time for cooking meat, turkey, poultry in specific. Because these are half pints, there isn't a tried or tested recipe that I know of as far as how long to can it for. So I'm going to go by the pint times because I feel that that's what's safe for what I'm doing. Quarts are 90 minutes. If you're canning your shredded poultry in quarts, but I don't do that big because it would half go to waste. So there we have it. Now we're just waiting for this to get up to temperature and to start venting.
In the spirit of the channel's slogan, be curious, keep an open mind, and never stop learning, I have to admit to a heavy emphasis on the still learning part. As I edited this video, I discovered that I somehow either did not record the finished turkey in jars, or lost it in a bit of behind-the-scenes file uploading drama. Instead, here's some extra axle cuteness. I'll be sharing a video focused on how to safely pressure can soon, so you can see how the process works. Thanks for your support as we work to make better and better videos for you to enjoy. Until next time, be curious, keep an open mind, and never stop learning.